The Trixster here. How do? Batsley, what do we have for today?
We've got the NFL protesters in their false narrative.
Was that holding? Pass interference? Hot.
So this all started about 2 years ago with Colin Kaepernick protesting the oppression of black people in America based on police violence. First off, this is not a First Amendment issue. Many people have said this is a First Amendment issue. It's not a First Amendment issue. First Amendment protects you from what the government might do due to your speech. It does not protect you from what your employer might do due to your speech. Now, having said that, I don't mind at all. If the NFL wants to continue to let these guys protest openly, that's their business, that's their policy. They put a policy in place they would stay in the locker room this year. They're not enforcing that policy, apparently. That's fine, that's their business. Now, on the other hand, it's the average American's right to vote with their pocketbook. If they don't like these things, then they don't like these protests, and they don't have to sit there and watch the games. They don't have to pay for the games. They don't have to buy the merchandise. And that's really the best way to show your displeasure. If you don't like it, don't buy it. Don't buy the product. That'll break this down real fast. These guys, when they start seeing their paychecks drop out, will understand that the country knows this is, by and large, a false narrative. So I thought I'd take a look at what are they actually protesting. What is it that they're really angry about, or what they say they are? And by and large, what I found was they're most upset about the killing, or what they call the unjustified killing of black people by the police. And I said, well, let's take a look at the statistics on this. Let's break it down, and let's just see how egregious this problem is. How serious is this problem? And then I thought, let's go on after that to see how it compares to other problems the black community is facing. So in order to get an idea of how serious or how widespread the killing of unarmed black men by the police was, I went to the Washington Post database, which they keep on actual shooting deaths that occur at the hands of the police. Now, what I quickly found is that, and these statistics are broken down by race, they're broken down by whether you're armed or unarmed, by gender, etc. So what I looked at was in this case, these numbers are the black individuals that were killed by police in 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, and those that were unarmed. The unarmed statistic is calculated by multiplying the percent of the unarmed of the total populations by this number. They do not stratify the unarmed characteristic by race. So I just took the general percent of unarmed individuals and multiplied it to the black people, saying they'd have about the same rate of being unarmed or armed as the average person in society. And you can see 28, 14 in 2016, 29, and 2018. So, these are not a large amount of deaths. You're talking about thousands, maybe tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of interactions of the police with different black individuals. To come up with numbers that are, below 30, it's just not a large magnitude. It doesn't support getting vastly angry and upset, and it certainly doesn't support that the police are somehow engaged in some kind of systematic attack on black people. These numbers do not support that. So I thought let's take a look at how numbers on, how deaths happen in America. Let's take a look and compare these numbers to other causes of death in America. Okay, so here we have the real-time current death toll from January 1st to August 27th. And we're taking a look at, let's compare these numbers. Those numbers are all under 30 deaths, remember, per year. Abortion, and I know that the black community has about 3 times the abortion rate as the white community. If, people have different feelings on abortion, but 714,000. You can see heart disease, cancer, tobacco, obesity, medication errors. Okay, fine. These are health problems. Let's dip down and take a look at some other things that aren't necessarily health problems. Suicide, 27,000. Drunk driving, 22,000. Unintentional poisoning, 20,000. Drug abuse, 16,000. Homicide, 10,000. Something blacks are more involved with than whites on a per capita basis. Prescription overdose, murder by gun, texting while driving. We keep going down. Drowning, 2,000. Then you get down here to lawnmower. Okay? Come on now. Really, I mean, there are more deaths by lawnmower in the United States than deaths of unarmed black men per year by the police. I mean, really, come on. Really, are we going to go out and protest lawnmowers now? I just don't understand this. Even by the numbers, this is not a very big issue. It's a fake issue. It's an issue that I think they just think it's easier to blame somebody else for these issues, and they'd rather blame the police. I think the police are doing a good job. It's unarmed black men deaths is under lawnmower. I mean, the death of all black men by police every year is under that of people falling out of bed. This is not a massive systemic racial abuse. That's nonsense, just based on looking at these numbers. So let's go through a list of the problems in the black community that are larger than unarmed black men being killed by the police. And by larger, I mean like comparing Jupiter to the size of a basketball. So, problema numero uno, here we can see in an article from the Washington Examiner, 77% black births to single moms. That is ridiculous. That is obnoxious. But I guess I shouldn't complain. I mean, we've only got, they still have another 23% to get to 100% out of wedlock births. So we got some room to work with. I mean, give me a break. This is a way, way bigger problem. And by the way, is causatory for the problems we see with police with blacks. It's unbelievable how much bigger this is. Is anyone in the NFL protesting this nonsense? This is nonsense here. And then you see 49% for Hispanic immigrants. And I believe the article goes on to state 30% for whites. 30% out of wedlock birth is a travesty. It should be 5% or less. And if you had that, you'd have a great society. But 77% is just, that's irresponsibility on a ridiculous level. All right, here we have an article from Investors Business Daily, and it's entitled Out of Wedlock Births Are a Plague on Minority Families. And, the first person that we look at in this article making a quote is President Barack Obama. We know the statistics, he says. Here it is. We know the statistics, said President Barack Obama, that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of schools, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They are more likely to have behavioral problems or want to run away from home, or become teenage parents themselves. Surprisingly, he did very little about this. He liked to fuel narratives like the NFL protesters are fueling, but the fact is, he did in this point recognize that you have huge problems in the black community due to out-of-wedlock birth, right? They're at 77%. Pretty surprising. Another thing I looked at and found interesting in this article is comments right here from Tupac Shakur, right? So if you don't know who Tupac Shakur is, he's a rapper, a former rapper. Actually, the Trixster does dig some of his songs. They're pretty good. Tupac Shakur, the rapper killed in an unsolved and possibly gang-related murder, once said, "I know for a fact that had I had a father, I'd have some discipline. I'd have more confidence." Tupac admitted he began running with gangs because he wanted structure and protection. Your mother cannot calm you down the way a man can. Your mother can't reassure you the way a man can. My mother couldn't show me where my manhood was. You need a man to teach you how to be a man. Not exactly two conservative advocates, right? The President Barack Obama, and Tupac Shakur, a rapper. Both indicating this is a big problem. This out-of-wedlock birth is a huge social problem, and the black community is giant. I mean, you're talking, what did I say, 77% out-of-wedlock births. So the reality is these NFL players need to focus on these issues, because these issues will solve all the other issues. And these issues are much larger than the police issues. The police are not causing out-of-wedlock births in the black community. It's the community itself. And it needs to take a good long look in the mirror and quite frankly, clean up its act. Problema numero dos. Blacks commit way too much crime per capita. Alright, so I have a cumulative crime table here from the FBI. And you can see total crimes committed were in about 9 million. 6.2 million committed by whites, and 2.5 million committed by blacks. Now, at first glance, that looks promising, right? That you would say blacks aren't committing more crime, but the reality is the black population is about 4.8 times less than the white population. So you have to normalize this number here to get the proper magnitude of the crime they'd actually be committing. If you'd have to multiply this by 4.8. That gives you approximately 12 million total crimes, or 2 times as many as whites commit, roughly speaking. Now, if we take a look at murder right here, you can see a population that's 5 times smaller than the white population is straight up committing more murders. The blacks are straight up committing more murders than white people, and they're 5 times less the population. If you normalize this, they would commit 21,000 murders a year, or 5.5 times as many murders as whites. Let's take a look at rape, another serious crime. White people committed about 9,000, and blacks committed 4.2, but when you normalize once again, they would have committed 20,000 rapes, or 2.3 times as many as whites if they were the same size in population. Let's take a look at robbery. 32,000, 33,000 committed by whites, 44,000 by African Americans. Straight up, once again, a population that's 1/5 the size of the white population is outdoing it in terms of robbery. If they were normalized, they'd commit 212,000 robberies, or 6.5%, or 6.5 times roughly, the robberies whites commit. We can look at aggravated assault. Have the same kind of thing here. 183,000 by whites, 98,000 by blacks. Once again, though, if you normalize, the blacks would commit 473,000 or 474,000 almost aggravated assaults. So roughly 2.6 times the amount of aggravated assaults that whites commit. So another major complaint of these players that kneel is that, well, the prisons have like 50 or 60% black population. Why is that? Why? Well, because they commit way more crimes per capita than anybody else. Is it not logical that if you commit way more crimes per capita than anybody else, that you're going to go to prison and be in the court system and confronting police much more? If these crimes were stopped from being committed, which a big causal factor we know is a household without a father, then this all wouldn't be happening. So my point is, once again, they're blaming an effect rather than looking at the cause. The reason why they're so much involved with law enforcement and in prison more and have more altercations is because they commit way more crimes per capita. It's just that simple, period. Problemo numero tres, black on black crime. Alright, so here's an article by Heather McDonald of the New York Post entitled, "All That Kneeling Ignores the Real Cause of Soaring Black Homicides." So we go on to look here, and this is an interesting paragraph. Nearly 900 additional blacks were killed in 2016 compared with 2015, bringing the black homicide victim total to 7,881. I think that's a little larger than under 30 unarmed black men killed by the police. Why aren't these NFLers protesting this? I mean, this is much more serious. Those 7,881 black bodies in the parlance of Ta-Nehisi Coates are 1,305 more than the number of white victims, which in this case includes most Hispanics for the same period, though blacks are only 13% of the nation's population. In other words, they kill each other a lot more than anybody else does, is what that basically comes to. And then we come here. Who is killing these black victims? Not whites, and not the police, but other blacks. Okay, that is another very large problem that's being ignored, and this is why it's a false narrative. You're complaining about the death of 20, 15, whatever, under 30 people, less than lawnmowers, right? But nobody's talking about this, right? 7,881 people, black on black crime. No one's talking about, Chicago pouring out shootings every weekend that are ridiculous. I think 2 or 3 weekends ago, I don't know when it was, they had something like 73 shootings. These were black people shooting other black people. That's the bigger problem. And that's why, the narrative just isn't respected, because it's obvious. It's certainly not the biggest problem, and the police are not engaged in any systematic issue against black people. The fact is the black people are committing more crimes, and that's why they run into the police more. And that's it. That's the end of it. Don't pass go, don't collect $200. That's the reality. So if we continue from the same article, we take a look and we see in 2016, the police fatally shot 233 blacks, the vast majority armed and dangerous, according to the Washington Post. That's the same statistics I was giving earlier. The paper categorized only 16 black male victims of police shooting as unarmed. That classification masks assaults against officers and violent resistance to arrest. So in other words, the 16 unarmed guys could have been trying to go for the officer's gun, attacking him, trying to beat him up, something like that. Contrary to the Black Lives Matter narrative, the police have much more to fear from black males than black males have to fear from the police. In 2015, a police officer was 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black male than an unarmed black male was to be killed by a police officer. And they're protesting. These NFL players are protesting. Maybe the police should be protesting. What nonsense. So if the NFL is wondering why their ratings are dropping, if these players that are kneeling are wondering why middle America doesn't support them, it's because they have a false narrative that they're promoting. The reality is middle America knows we have the best police force collectively in the entire world. The best trained, the most professional. And the numbers have borne that out. They've totally defeated this nonsense argument. You're talking about less people killed a year than lawnmowers from a group of people committing massively more amount of crimes than whites and way more than other races. And, there's just no question about it. This is nonsense. And people can detect nonsense, and the NFL's ratings will continue to drop. So rather than I, the great trickster, finishing this out, I'm going to let the very, very, very great national hero Thomas Sowell give his little take on this, and then we'll drop the mic. Thanks very much. Trickster out.
You can't find any fault with any group that is less fortunate. There are no behaviors that they need to change in order to advance. Society needs to accept them as they are. In other words, the causes are to remain the same, but the effects are to change. And if the effects don't change, then it's society's fault.
Batsley, keep the lights on.
You got it, Trickster. Hey, if you like what you're hearing and you want to hear more, kick us a couple bucks on our Patreon site. The link's in the description below. Or you can buy some slick Trickster gear at the link in the description below. You can get a t-shirt or a sweet hoodie, or you can even take your morning cup of joe in one of our coffee mugs. Help us out and keep capitalism in America alive. Later.
And as always, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Trickster out.